All right, guys, the watch list for Monday, June 6th. The SPY held up again. Let me show you 5-minute candles. I've been doing this a lot lately in the videos, showing you how, look how the SPY gapped down, sold off. These are 5-minute candles here. And look at that bounce, back through the highs. Same thing the day before on Thursday. Sold off, back through the highs. Wednesday, big gap down, climbed all day. So this market is very resilient. I would love to give you an explanation for it, but I can't. I'm just a trader, and I trade what's in front of me, so that's all you can do. But I still want to look at the overall market and see how resilient it is, or where it's at, or if longs are in control, shorts are in control, and right now longs certainly seem to be winning the overall battle. So here is my list for Monday. This is actually one of my favorites as far as potential for Monday, but anything can happen. This is VBLT, closed at 397. And I actually found this just because I liked the chart. I was looking at a bunch of charts and thought, hey, this looks pretty good. And then I happened to notice, looking at one of my charts, I put after hours on it too, and I happened to notice that this thing actually went up over 7 in after hours on Friday, obviously on news, and closed out after hours at 582. So it's set, if it opens somewhere around there, we're looking to open all the way up here. Still could be a really nice gap play on Monday. If you look at back here, this thing made a huge move for 3 or 4 days. So it's a lower float stock, and with good news, it's certainly worth watching. I would love to have had it as a swing, but I don't swing. So we'll watch that one as a potential gap and go on Monday. LBIO, I like to put these on watch. I generally don't trade these the very next day because it's extended, but anything can happen, so we'll see. But whenever you have a stock out of the blue get this kind of volume spike and this kind of move, that one's got to be on watch. If you're a serious day trader, it's got to be on watch for the next week or so. Okay, so LBIO is going to land on a chart on one of my monitors on Monday and all next week, really. I still like this NEOT. You had the gap down back here, and I'll zoom in a little bit and get the gap out of there. So then you had this spike in kind of mid to late April that took it to $1.56, then a lower high. Now we're working on taking out this lower high and holding up pretty well. So I don't really have a trigger price. I mean, maybe if it gets over the half on Monday, over $1.50, then maybe it'll make a run at this $1.56 and maybe break out through that, right? It's a beaten up stock. Reminds me a little bit of that EBIO. The chart is a little similar. We were watching this one when it was kind of flagging around this way, and it ended up having a big move on Thursday, and I skillfully missed it. But and then look at the move it made again on Friday. So kind of reminds me of that chart. Doesn't mean it has to do the same thing, but really consolidating here below $1.50. And then you look to the left, the high after the gap down was $1.88. So maybe we make a move to that if we can get to $1.50, and if you get up into that gap, anything can happen. It's an interesting chart, to say the least. CLRB goes back on watch, just kind of a quiet inside day on Friday, but you had a big pop here, kind of flagged, a nice pop on Thursday. Made a bunch of money in this on Thursday, and we'll watch it again. I'd like to see it break Friday's high over 414. Then you might, boom, boom, you might knock down these two dominoes right here, for lack of a better way of putting it. I like these stacked catalysts is a way it's a phrase I've coined in chat. And it's kind of, in 2 words, sums up my entire trading style. I try to find things that have stacked catalysts, right? In other words, if this breaks Friday's high, if it gets to 415 on Monday, you look to the left. The very next catalyst would be a break of 450 and then a break. So it's just kind of like picture dominoes. I like things that trigger, and the very next catalyst is pretty close, because then you can get that domino effect. All right, so keeps me in cash a lot of times unless I have a stacked catalyst play, and I'm very, very comfortable being in cash while looking for setups. So anyway, CETX. Let me pan out a little bit here. You had a spike back here to almost $3 on Thursday. It popped to almost 3 again, gave a lot of that back, but then on Friday gapped up and was stronger. So this is a low float stock, and it might just get going. You had some nice rips back here. Certainly looks good over $3. Friday's high, speaking of stacked catalyst, 293. So if you get through that, it's a good chance you take out Thursday's high, 298, and then this high was 299. So you might just rip through 3, in other words. And then you look to the left, there's not much in the way. So the first catalyst for this one that I'll be looking for will be 294 on Monday. That might be where I'll take a position. Keep in mind, it doesn't have to be. It could. There's 100 scenarios that I could go over, right? But just to give you one example, this might just open at 280 and base between 280 and 290 for the first hour, right? And then if it breaks 290, I'll grab it. 291, looking for it to hit this next catalyst of 294 and then knock down the other dominoes. Okay, so I don't know how it's going to happen, how it's going to trade, but that's one scenario. So in other words, 294 isn't the only entry that I might take. I might be able to get in lower and have 294 be the next domino to fall. So keep that in mind. All right, SWHC really took a beating on Friday, and I'm pretty sure it was on the news. They came out with the background checks stat, I guess by the FBI or something like that, and it was significantly lower than the previous month, which is obviously coincides with people trying to buy guns, and so that really hit. If you look at this on an intraday basis, this thing just fell apart. We actually had a nice bounce play in chat on this one. I think we got along on this one as it was going back up. In the 2280s, I think, and very next candle took us all the way to 2340. I made a little over $300 on that little bounce there, and ended up coming back down. But because it's got earnings coming out soon, and I should have them in front of me, I'd sound more professional if I had the earnings date. You know what? I'll look it up real quick. Okay, I found June 16th to be the day they report earnings, so 10 days from Monday. And you've got some interesting things below here. You've got really kind of nice support right here around or slightly below 22. And below that, you've got the 200-day. If I pan way out, it'll extend that 200-day. This thing hasn't even touched the 200-day in a long time. Looks a little bit head and shoulders, right? Head and shoulders-y, is that a word? But still, I like the support down here below. And I'd be a little bit nervous to short a gun manufacturer right before earnings, because I know there's a ton of people that own guns that didn't used to, and maybe that's waning a little bit, but I wouldn't want to be short, the day or two before earnings. So just, keep with that in mind, keep this on your radar. The closer you get to June 16th, the more I'll be looking for a bounce. I don't know if it's going to bounce on Monday, but I do like the support in this area here on the 200-day. So if this were to tank again Monday morning, I might be looking for a long on an intraday reversal. But anyway, keep that one on your radar. That's SWHC. CSLT had this nice pop, a little bit of a lower high here, and it's kind of in a tight flag pattern. So I want to watch that for a possible break to the upside. VSLR, kind of the same thing, right? Nice pop. You've got a few days lower now, back down close to the 8-day. Good chance for this one to turn up pretty soon. OPTT, huge pop. This would have been Wednesday, then Thursday down, Friday down, but pretty narrow range on Friday. Pretty good chance for a pop up there sometime next week. We'll start watching it on Monday. BWEN gapped up and sold off that day and sold off Friday as well. That one might be ready to turn back up, so another potential bounce play. And then TTNP gapped up on FDA approval, sold off big, and now you're down 1, 2, not counting the gap up day, you're still down 1, 2, 3, 4 days in a row. This green line isn't the 50, it's actually the 60 period moving average that I use for my 5-minute candles, but I can slide this smaller chart up here. The 50-day is basically, it did pierce that and close below that, but you might just get a nice snapback. This thing is certainly overdue for a bounce after good news, right? About a week ago, sellers have done pretty well. I'm looking for this one to potentially bounce back up on Monday. All right, so we will work together in the chat room in the pre-market on Monday to build ourselves a gap list and hopefully catch some gap plays out of that. We'll also be watching this list I just gave you, and then throughout the day we'll be looking for reversal setups like that Smith & Wesson on Friday I showed you and stuff like that too. So great teamwork in the chat room. There's almost always somebody spotting a setup and a lot of money to be made if you make sure that you focus on defense first and always focus on your correct position size, scaling out when things move in your favor, and then tightening your stop on the rest. I love to be in what I call a can't-lose trade. In other words, we call something, starts knocking down those dominoes I talked about, start scaling out, and then the rest of your shares are basically free shares as long as you resolve to protect your entry after that. Hopefully you can ride it up and get what we call an accidental home run on the last few shares, but mostly defense-oriented in there, and great teamwork. So I'm going to quit babbling. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, and we'll talk to you on Monday.